Hello, everyone, and welcome to the program. This is Sunday Politics live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Wakimbaloye in Lagos. Tonight, we should focus on a few issues, one of which will be the issue of the impeachment of the Deputy Governor of Kogi State, Mr. Simon Achuba, by the State House of Assembly. That is going to be in the second half of the program. But first, our attention and the conversation we'll be having tonight will be largely on Ekiti State, national politics, the state of economy, issues of security in Nigeria. And our guest tonight is the chairman of the Nigerian Governors Forum and the governor of Ekiti State, Dr. Fayemi. He joins us from our Abuja studio. Thank you so much, Governor Fayemi, for joining us tonight. And let me first say congratulations on your first year and the second term in office. Let's begin the conversation tonight on some of the promises you made while you assumed office a year ago. You made several promises. You had 4 cardinal points that you said you were going to work on. 1 year later, how fast do you think you have worked, and how well do you think you have performed?
Good evening, Sheo, and good evening to viewers at home. Well, this is the first year of a second term in office. It's not my first year in government. So my first year had concentrated largely on rebuilding and continuing some of the things that I did during my first term that had been halted by my successor in office. Of course, this is not the end of my term. I don't want to be the one to give myself marks. I think that's for Ekiti people to judge. But I think we've delivered the task of restoring our values and enhancing impact in governance pretty well.
One of the things that you mentioned in your inaugural speech, part of your 4-point agenda is social investment. I remember that there was a time that you were paying, is it 5,000 naira to indigent Ekiti citizens? Have you said you were going to start that. Have you started it again?
I just started it, Sheung. I just restarted the social security benefit for the elderly. Which was my promise in my inaugural speech on October 16, 2018. And really, for me, it just strengthens my own vision of running a government that helps the weak and the vulnerable. Many of our elderly people are indigent, and instead of looking for excuses, we feel that it's in our place as a government to support them in their old age. They've given of themselves to the state, many of them, and one of the things we've done in that regard is to ensure that those who were retirees amongst them and their pension benefits regularly, unlike what was happening before I came into office. Secondly, for those who have never worked in white-collar circumstances, either because they were farmers or doing artisanal work, we are utilizing this as an opportunity to support them and ensure that they live a reasonably decent life in old age. Of course, 5,000 naira is, to a Lagosian like yourself, may not be a lot of money, but in Ekiti, if it is consistent, you would even be surprised that some of the elderly people save out of this. But we're also complementing that social security benefit for the elderly with what we call Onje Arugbo, which is a food bank that is run by the Office of the Wife of Governor in Ekiti State. So we have resumed the social security benefit.
I want to, because the first question I asked is what you've done in the first year. Because a lot of Ekiti people will be wondering, a lot of Nigerians, you being the chairman of the Governors Forum also means that you are perhaps a leader in that stock. So the big question will be for Dr. Fayemi, who is coming back for a second term in office. After this fourth year, Although you made it clear about some of the challenges relating to the issues of the debt that you met on the ground, you said it was about 170 billion from the past administration. So for this first year in your second term, what would you say is a significant thing that you have done to the Ekiti people?
Well, let's talk about the debt profile that you mentioned. If you look at the latest record from the Debt Management Office, it would be clear to any independent observer that we have significantly reduced the debt profile of Ekiti State. I think the latest figure they've come up with is somewhere in the region of about 100 million, which has shaved off about 30 billion from what we met when we came to office. But that's not the only issue that we're tackling. You would recall that when I was in office, I ran a government that was really people-centered, and that's what we're doing again. When I came in, I revoked the tax that students were paying in school, returned the free education program up till senior secondary schools, returned the payment of WAEC examination fees, JAMB examination fees for all of our students, instructional materials returned to school, running grants returned to schools. These were things that had been missing over the past couple of years. Retraining of teachers have expanded, rebuilding of schools have also continued. So these are the things we've done, for example, in the education sector. On infrastructure, because we do not have a lot of resources in Ekiti, outside of our meager federation account allocation and our internally generated revenue, a lot of the work we're doing on our infrastructure development is something that has come out of our very robust partnership with many of our development partners, the World Bank, the African Development Bank, and a number of private sector players. And those are the things I promised. On social investment, on agriculture and rural development. We have Promacedo now in our state in partnership with us to revive our moribund Ikunderi farm. We're talking to Dangote, we're talking to Koskaris about rice mill. We have new cassava mills in the state. We're clearing land for our farmers. We're reviving our youth in commercial agriculture development program. And we're going to be focusing a lot on improving our rural roads under the RAMP program that we have just entered into with the World Bank. We are also, of course, taking additional steps in improving on the road network in the state. You've had the discussion lately about Ado-Akure Road and our continuing negotiations with the federal government over the in-principle assistance that we've received from the African Development Bank. But because we're not a sovereign, we need the approval of the federal government to help repair their own road, reconstruct it, and dualize it. And that's something that we're working on with the Federal Ministry of Works and Housing. Of course, on investment and industrial development, we are also improving the ease of doing business in Ekiti State, because this was a challenge. A number of the private sector operators that left the state in the wake of the last administration, many of them are back in the state. New ones are coming on stream in the state. New hotels are opening in the state. Bonn Hotel, which is an international chain, is just starting up in Ekiti. And this is significant because we know that this would also up the game for our local hospitality initiatives and ensure that they even perform better in an attempt to compete with such an international chain in the state. So, and much more importantly, our workers are now receiving salaries regularly as at when due. They've not missed one salary since I became governor in October 2018.
But have you paid the outstanding salaries that have been owed before you got into office? Have you cleared those?
Well, not all of them, but we are clearing those. I don't want to go into any discussion as to whether it was salaries owed by me or salaries owed by my predecessor. It's clear that this was salary owed by my predecessor, but it's my duty as their governor to clear these arrears. The resources that were made available by the federal government in the bailout scheme, which we are now repaying, by the way, was not fully utilized to clear those salaries. So it's a burden that I have to carry, and I've reassured our workers that we will clear it.
How many of those have you cleared in the last 1 year?
We've cleared a month of it. In the last 1 year, we have 3 months left for state workers.
Let me quickly ask you, because a lot of people will say, fantastic idea. Some of the things that you said you're introducing and you're enabling since you got into office over a year ago. The question will be, what is the import of some of these efforts that you're making? Some of your critics in the first term and some of the reasons that are being brought into the reason why you lost election the last time was perhaps Dr. Fayemi's agenda was too elitist. It was too far away from the reality of the average Ekiti people on the street. So those are some of the things your critics said. But in practical terms, over the last 1 year, some of these initiatives that you've talked about, what impact do you think, immediate impact do you think it has made on the lives of Ekiti people? You did say that you're not a magician, but in the real sense of it, all of these things that you have listed tonight, what direct practical impact have they made on the life of an average Ekiti person?
Sean, frankly, I don't know what is elitist about ensuring that workers who have toiled hard get paid regularly. When you come to Ekiti now, you see a significant difference in the lives of our workers. And in Ekiti, you're not just talking about the actual workers. For the average civil servant or teacher or nurse that you have in Ekiti, they are responsible for at least 10 other persons that they are catering to their needs in their families, both nuclear and extended. So when you have somebody who receives salaries regularly and can plan his or her life in a very, very predictable manner because they know that government is not going to renege on the payment of salary, that's not elitist in a state like ours. Two, when you ensure that those who are the weak and the vulnerable in society are supported. What is elitist about that? It is people who are in the rural areas, who are the farmers in Ekiti. They're the ones that we're working with. They're the ones that we're supporting. Yes, I do believe that Ekiti belongs to the first world. Two things we're known for: agriculture and education. And those two things are things that we are also turning into wealth-creating opportunities in the state. So if somebody says that is elitist, that we want to translate the knowledge that we are widely credited for in Nigeria to a smart vehicle for transformation of our state, yeah, we plead guilty to such elitist charges. And the reason is simple. We do not believe that we should continue to do the same thing we've been doing. We need to leapfrog at a time that we're talking about the fourth industrial revolution. What is the benefit of a state that has 90% of enrollment in school if we also don't ensure that technology plays a critical role in the development of such pupils who are in school? So I really do not accept that charge. Neither do I even accept your earlier claim that my election in 2014 was purportedly lost because of some elitist agenda. I do not believe that Ekiti people should be beneficiaries of handouts. I believe that if we're going to support our people, there must be a very well-structured social investment agenda, and that is what we're doing. Because Ekiti people are a people of values, and they're very proud they have integrity, they are hardworking, and they need the government to recognize that and to support their hardworking initiatives. So that's what we're doing with them.
Well,
We don't
Governor
consider that
Fayemi, if
elitist
I
in
may
any way.
butt in, apologies. One of the criticism now is coming the fact that there are taxes being levied against the ordinary man on the street in Ekiti State, and your critics and the opposition in the state are saying this is unfair. Especially if an example is the Okada riders, some of whom believe, some of the association believe that they have not gotten support from Governor Fayemi.
Well, I do not believe that you'll find any Okada rider in Ekiti State who would say that. Whatever we're charging the Okada riders via the Inland Revenue Service was actually something that came out of extensive engagements with them, because they themselves, they know that they need government support in terms of security, in terms of streamlining their operations, and in terms of ensuring that whatever it is that we're doing by way of infrastructure improvements, they also contribute their own quota. And I don't believe that asking them to pay, I think 100 naira a day is too much for them, because what they make is significantly more than that.
I mean, you are the one who said earlier that 5,000 could be very significant to an average Ekiti person for a month. So, I mean, if some of them are lamenting that 100 naira charge or some of these levies against them is too burdensome, and they believe that over the last years they're not experiencing this, and this time around they're being charged for these, and they
well,
don't they have the right to complain about
we're not adding to taxes in Ekiti. We are improving on collection of taxes in Ekiti, and we're ensuring that the tax net is such that those who should pay would not be allowed to escape payment of taxes, because all of these things we're doing, provision of free education, provision of free health care, social investment program, are coming from the hard-earned resources of those who are paying their taxes. And it's only fair that we should insist that those who work should pay taxes out of the profit they're making in Ekiti State. It's a very fair tax regime that we have in Ekiti. We don't have a punitive tax measure at all.
Before we go on our first break on the program, Governor Fayemi, you said in your inaugural speech that you are not interested in witch hunting anyone, but you will review what has been done and spent over the past 4 years before you assumed office. And you said that you will make that public within the first 100 days in office. Have you done that?
Absolutely. I gave a State of the State address on my 100th day in office, and I gave an account of the finances of Ekiti State the way I met it after I commissioned a forensic audit by PricewaterhouseCoopers. I have done that. I've laid it before the representatives of the Ekiti people, the House of Assembly, and it's entirely up to them to decide what to do with that. I don't think anyone could accuse me of having witch hunted them in my 1 year in office. I don't have time for that. I've chosen to move on and leave those who have committed any infractions to be dealt with by those that are saddled with those responsibilities. There are institutions of state responsible for that. It's not my place to be distracting myself with monitoring what somebody did well or did not do well while in office.
Governor Fayemi, we'll go on break now, but did you discover that people stole money at those periods?
Sheung, I am not a court of law. I am not a commission of inquiry, and I'm not EFCC or ICPC. I'm sure those institutions have very wide powers. If they discover that, I'm sure they will take it up.
All right, we'll take a breather. Up next, we shall be talking to Governor Fayemi on some national issues. As the chairman of the Governors Forum, his views on security in Nigeria, the economy, and the minimum wage. Plus, we'll also ask him some very sensitive issues about Ekiti State. That's next on the program, everyone. Join us again. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us. Let's get back to the conversation. Dr. Fayemi, the governor of Ekiti State, has been speaking to us on the program. Let's get some of our concluding thoughts of the governor on the affairs of Ekiti State. I have just about 2 or so questions before we get your view on national issues. The question I wanted to ask is the fact that you said PricewaterhouseCoopers, they did an audit of the Ekiti State government finances. But it would be good for the Ekiti people as executive governor, for them, since they are the ones who voted for you, to know what is the state of the finance and what do you discover based on that audit. Was it discovered in that audit that corruption existed or people stole money in that administration?
Well, Sheung, Ekiti people are aware of what we found out because this was laid before their representatives. The House of Assembly is the representative body of Ekiti people. And the reason why we presented that report at the House of Assembly is precisely because they can then communicate it to their own representatives. And this was on live television in Ekiti State. So Ekiti people are not as oblivious as you might think as far as this issue is concerned. And the House of Assembly are already taking steps as they know best in relation to that. And I believe that if they find any infractions, they would make that known to the appropriate authorities.
Are you saying all was well in that audit? Because, for example, for the benefit of those who were not able to watch the Ekiti broadcast in the Ekiti locally, and who are watching, millions of Nigerians who are watching now, are you saying all was well? Is there nothing that you want to tell Nigerians about what you found out?
Obviously, Sheung, you know I'm not saying all was well. I already said to you, for example, that the support that came by way of bailout funds, budget support funds that were meant to have been used to clear arrears of salaries. I still met arrears of salaries when I came into office, and you just asked me about that. So, of course, there's a direct correlation between what was given and what was it utilized for. That's some of the facts that were contained in the Pricewaterhouse review. But I said to you earlier that I am moving on. For me, I want to improve the lives of Ekiti people. I want Ekiti to be better than how I found it when I became governor. Gnashing my teeth, complaining about what transpired, as much as I am interested in ensuring that people are actually fully aware of what transpired, I don't want to distract myself with that, Sheung. At the end of the day, Ekiti people want to know the legacies I'm leaving behind by the time I leave office in 2022. They don't want to hear stories. Even things that are not directly my responsibility. I was just talking to you about Ado Akure Road. Now, that's a federal road, but Ekiti people are not happy that that road is in the state that it is, because they're the ones, as well as Ondo people, who utilize the road more than others. So they blame their governors for this, even though this is not the state road. And that's why we have to take a step to focus on how do we rebuild this road, even if it belongs to federal government, even if the federal government says they don't want to pay a refund for whatever work we do on it, at least our people would enjoy it. That's what I'm interested in. I'm not looking backward, I'm looking forward.
Let me, I just wanted to get, would you describe what was found out as mind-boggling? The infractions you talked about.
Obviously, it was mind-boggling. Of course, it was mind-boggling.
Okay, let's move on quickly. And you you did say, I mean, the APC in Ekiti in 2015 criticized the airport project and they described it as a drain pipe. Taiwo Olatunbosun, in a statement at that time, described that project, the airport project, as a drain pipe meant to siphon money from Ekiti Treasury. And this was the same airport that you flagged off a few days ago as part of the activities of your 1 year in office. And the question will be, this was a project that wasn't totally supported by your party in 2015, and this is a project that you have taken up as perhaps a signpost project.
Okay, Sean, let me take you back a little bit into history. That project you spoke about did not start in 2015. It didn't start under my predecessor's government. As a matter of fact, that project came up when one of our sons, Tunde Omotoba, was Minister for Aviation under the Yaradua administration. And he was championed largely by Chief Afe Babalola, who, as you know, has a major university in our state, is one of our icons in Ekiti, and he was very, very committed to us having a local airport. And yes, you are also right that I was not exactly an enthusiast of the local airport. And even now, you could say that I am not an enthusiast. But you know, when you are a leader, you're not just a leader for yourself. You are a leader for your people. You are the leader for today and the future of your people. So if I'm preparing Ekiti for the future because I have been convinced by those who have superior arguments on why there should be an airport in our state, I wouldn't say because I'm not a flag-waving supporter of an airport. No, I wouldn't do that. When facts are presented to me that are superior to my own understanding, I give in to facts. I'm an academic, so there's nothing to be ashamed of that at some point I was not an enthusiast of the airport, and now I've come round after I asked Chief Afe Babalola to chair a committee to look at the viability of an airport in Ekiti and what we could use our airport to do in order to accelerate economic development in Ekiti. And he came up with that report. On top of that, we have gotten the support of the African Development Bank in principle to help with the airport. So if we have those combination of factors, why should I then continue to pig-headedly maintain that I'm not an enthusiast of an airport?
Let me take you up on some national issues, of course, which have some direct impact on the governance locally in some of the federating units of the state. And one of it is the issue of the economy. Recently, there was an agreement between the federal government and the labor union about the minimum wage. But there is always a fear. Salaries are being owed in Ekiti State. Few months' salaries are being owed in Ekiti State. Are you afraid that Ekiti State presently is one of the states that received some of the lowest monies from the federal allocation monthly? Do you have the capacity in Ekiti State to pay the 30,000 naira minimum wage? And if you do, when are you starting?
Well, Sean, I've already gone on record on this. Nigerian governors agreed to the decision to pay the minimum wage of 30,000. And even though our original proposal as the Governors Forum was 24,500, we still have states that struggled all till very late to pay 18,000 that was agreed in 2011, 8 years ago. The challenge, the sticky point that we have at the level of governors is on the consequential adjustments, which has now been agreed by Labour and the federal government. And for us, we will be meeting. I don't want to give you a view until my colleagues and I have met to review how we're going to look at the template that has now come out of the negotiations at the federal level and see how that can be applied. But clearly, fingers are not equal at the state level. There will be challenges, and I hope Labour and state governments would both display a level of understanding that would assist the workers. Because what we do not want to see is pressure being put on states in a manner that then threatens the jobs of our workers. We don't want to see that, and we don't want workers to down tools. We want productivity to increase, and that's why we've said we are ready to pay 30,000. We're even ready to pay a level of consequential adjustment, but that has to be determined on a state-by-state basis.
So you've not told us when you are starting in Ekiti State. When are you,
We're starting this month in Ekiti State. We're starting this month in Ekiti State.
Okay, good. Let me quickly go into this issue of policing. Some people say we say state policing. Some others will say they call it some other names. But the question here is, how viable will this option be, considering the Southwest situation? Over some weeks ago, we saw what happened in the Southwest region, part of which Ekiti is. What would you suggest, and from the governor's point of view, is perhaps what could be the lasting solution to the issue of security in Nigeria?
Well, security is always going to be a going concern. There's no lasting solution. We'll keep improving on the mechanisms and policies that we put in place in order to guarantee security and safety of the citizens. As far as we're concerned at the level of governors, we're working with the Inspector General of Police and all other security agencies to reduce the spate of banditry, kidnapping, and all sorts of nefarious issues that we're grappling with. We've always said that, yes, you can have a law and order approach to policing, but that has to be localized in one form or another. Whether you call it state police, the reason why I refrain from calling this state policing is simply because the minute you say state police, people think you are suggesting a cancellation of federal police. And that's not what we're saying. We're saying Nigeria is the only federation in the world without a multi-level policing arrangement, with a centralized policing system. And that's not working. So we're saying federal police should exist for federal jurisdiction, state police should exist for state jurisdiction, even local police should exist. Whether you call it community police or local police or county police, it should just cascade down, and accountability for command and control should reside at the level where you have cascaded it to. That's our view. And what we have also said is that what we have now is really not working. Yes, you have the federal police, but it's a federal police that is suffering from the tyranny of an unfunded and an expanded mandate. They do not have enough resources to conduct their responsibilities effectively. So there is no state in this country that I know that is not doing so much for police command in their states.
All right.
States are buying ammunition, states are buying vehicles, they're buying drones, they're buying equipment, they're paying allowances. They're doing so much. The other day you saw my colleague, the governor of Anambra State, the IG was there. You saw the number of vehicles that were launched. And I know the number of vehicles we have just put together in what we call the Western Nigerian Security Network, Amoteco now, all in aid to all of our security agents. So if we're already doing it, what is wrong with giving us control to protect our people? That's partly why we're elected.
All right.
Security and the welfare of our people.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm
Well,
listening to you, Shem.
there's a whole lot to talk about, but we've, in fact, slightly overshot our time because of some of the importance of the conversation we've been having. I really wanted us to talk about you saying that you are going to make trouble with some of the parents who are not putting their children in school, but we are not able to talk about that for tonight. But my sincere thanks to
We should
you
talk
for coming
about
on.
it. We have a child rights law in our state, and it prohibits children that are of school age to be on the street hawking. It is unacceptable to us, and we're criminalizing it, and any parent that we found responsible for that shall face the wrath of the law. Children have a human right to be educated, and that's our duty in the state.
Governor Fayemi, Governor of Ekiti State and Chairman of the Nigerian Governors Forum, thank you so much for talking to us tonight on the program.